Peace and blessings. In the redemption study, I showed that the visitation of the Father's iniquity upon the sons in the third commandment is God's mercy to the wicked. So I want to further explore this from God's point of view. Jeremiah 14:10 says, "Thus saith Yahuwah unto this people, thus have they loved to wander, they have not refrained their feet, therefore Yahuwah does not accept them. He will now remember their iniquity and visit their sins." And in chapter 15, verse 4, it says, "And I will cause them to be removed into all kingdoms of the earth because of Manasseh, the son of Hezekiah, king of Judah, for that which he did in Jerusalem." So we see that this punishment is coming on behalf of Manasseh's sins. But if we go to chapter 16, verse 10 says, "And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt shew this people all these words, and they shall say unto thee, Wherefore hath Yahuwah pronounced all this great evil against us? Or what is our iniquity? Or what is our sin that we have committed against Yahuwah our God? Then shalt thou say unto them, Because your fathers have forsaken me, saith Yahuwah, and have walked after other gods, and have served them, and have worshipped them, and have forsaken me, and have not kept my law. And ye have done worse than your fathers." So now we get the full picture. The sins began with Manasseh, but they have continued and become even worse in this generation. And notice that God expects them to come and ask what they have done, as if they don't know that they are working iniquity in God's sight. So in 2 Kings 23, we see a righteous king, Josiah, who turns away from evil and does right in the sight of Yahuwah. Verse 25 says, "And like unto him was there no king before him that turned to Yahuwah with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to the law of Moses, neither after him arose there any like him. Notwithstanding, Yahuwah turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, wherewith his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him with." So we see that Manasseh's sins were so bad. Even after Josiah's righteousness, Yahuwah is still mad. So now, let's look at the kings after him. In 31, we see Jehoahaz succeeds him. And verse 32 tells us that he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. After him, in verse 36, we get Jehoiakim. Verse 37 says, "And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah." Now in chapter 24, we see Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, come against them. So this is the beginning of the fulfillment. In verse 6, we see Jehoiakim, his son, reigned in his stead. And verse 9 tells us he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. The next thing we see in verse 10 is Nebuchadnezzar come up against Jerusalem and besiege it. Finally, in verse 18, Zedekiah becomes king. And in verse 19, it tells us that he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. Chapter 25, verse 7 tells us that Zedekiah is carried off to Babylon. His eyes are put out and his sons are killed. And directly following this, we see the destruction of Solomon's temple. So let's go behind the scenes. What is God's method for doing this? Psalm 75:8 says, "For in the hand of Yahuwah there is a cup, and the wine is red. It is full of mixture, and he pours out of the same. But the dregs thereof, all the wicked of the earth, shall wring out and drink." So what's in God's cup? Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 15 says, "For thus saith Yahuwah Elohim of Israel unto me, Take the wine cup of this fury at my hand, and cause all the nations to whom I send thee to drink it." So there is fury or wrath in this wine cup. So how is this cup filled? In Matthew 23, verse 25, Yeshua says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye make clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess." So the cup is filled by the sins of the wicked. In verse 30, he says that they say, "If we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves, that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers." Verse 34, Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city. So just like we saw in Jeremiah, the Pharisees here are feigning innocence and saying that they wouldn't have done what their fathers did. But Yeshua counters them and says, oh yes, you would have, and in fact, you will. So in both of these examples, the generation being visited was evil and hated God, meaning they broke his commandments just as their fathers did, or worse. And their sins were added into God's cup, which their fathers had already poured into. Once they filled up the measure of their fathers, he pours it out and destroys the bloodline. So the last scenario I want to look at is 2 Samuel 21, verse 1. Then there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year, and David inquired of Yahuwah. And Yahuwah answered, it is for Saul and for his bloody house, because he slew the Gibeonites. Verse 3. Wherefore David said unto the Gibeonites, what shall I do for you, and wherewith shall I make the atonement, that ye may bless the inheritance of Yahuwah? And they answered the king, the man that consumed us and that devised against us, that we should be destroyed from remaining in any of the coasts of Israel, let 7 men of his sons be delivered unto us, and we will hang them up unto Yahuwah in Gibeah of Saul, whom Yahuwah did choose. And the king said, I will give them. Now in Numbers 35, verse 30, it says, whoso killeth any person, the murderer shall be put to death by the mouth of witnesses. But one witness shall not testify against any person to cause him to die. Verse 33. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood defiles the land. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So we go on to see 7 men of Saul's household given to the Gibeonites, and they do as they said. Now throughout the scripture, we are given no information about these people, besides who their parents are. But verse 3 tells us that they are given as atonement. So in the case of the 7 men who were hanged for the blood of the Gibeonites, you have to decide whether they were innocent and God unjust in having them killed for their father's sin, or if God has information we don't about the situation. I choose to believe the latter. So thank you for joining me. Feel free to drop any comments, concerns, agreements, or disagreements in the comment section below. I hope that this study has blessed you and inspired you to search further into Yah's word. May Yahuwah bless you and keep you. May Yahuwah shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.